Hey everybody, welcome to Life is Beautiful. I'm Anthony, and today we're going to be doing an episode of This Week in Beer, the segment of my channel where we go through and we talk about the hardest hitting news stories coming out of beer, brewing, home brewing, industry, beer. So the first story this week is a little bit of controversy. Y'all know I love to start off with some juicy tidbits. The Reckless Brewing Company out of San Diego. You could say they made some decisions that were a bit reckless. First, the owner of the brewery decided to go onto the brewery's Facebook, social media, because I'm pretty sure he hit it up on several different platforms, and kind of went on a racist tirade. It has several different portions of racism, different reasons it's racist, but let's just start off with the simple one. He decided to rename his Schwarzbier, his black lager, to Black Lagers Matter. You know, like a play on the words of the social movement going on, Black Lives Matter, which has been pretty much a hot topic for the past 5 or so years here in America, and a lot of people don't really take kindly to it when you make fun of it. Unfortunately, that was only the tip of the spear for this dumb story. The post went on to make many comparisons between black lagers and black people, and claimed that black loggers were under the same level of oppression because they're black, I guess. But the worst of all, and the thing that I think that got the most people upset, was that he kind of did a play on words by making his post kind of seem like the famous Martin Luther King "I Had a Dream" speech. And of course, when he was called out and, informed that his post was not well liked and not well received, he doubled down and said it was all just a joke, and that people try way too hard to be offended. Which, to some degree, I do agree that we do have a problem with outrage culture. But this kind of seems justified a little bit to me. As a result of this backlash, the owner took to social media earlier this week and announced that he would be closing Reckless Brewing. The owner decided that he was unable to deal with the backlash and the vitriol he received for his post, and that it would be just better for him and everyone involved and everyone offended that he just closed his doors permanently. So as far as the way I interpret this story, I feel two ways about it. First, I do actually believe that the guy was just trying to make a joke. I just think it was incredibly dumb to do so, and I think it was an incredibly bad taste. But I do think it was him just really trying to make an edgy edgelord joke. But on the other hand, regardless of whether it was a joke or not, I also kind of agreed that he deserved all the backlash that he got. Because this wasn't even the first time that this exact brewery from this exact same person has faced this exact same issue. The dude has a beer called Genocide. I mean, who wants to sit down at a bar and have a big old glass of Genocide? It's just the level of stupidity in this brewery and in this story is literally palpable. Because regardless of how you feel about the political climate in the United States, you're running a business. And when you thrust yourself into situations like this and you start throwing your opinion or making light of a situation like what happened in this exact same instance, you're going to end up alienating your consumer base. I do think that it is unfortunate that a joke could result in such backlash, but I also think that there needs to be a level of self-awareness that revolves around this situation to know what is an appropriate joke, what is not an appropriate joke, and where that appropriate line falls is when you're in a business, If you're like a stand-up comedian, that's one thing. If you're just a regular Joe Schmo, that's your right to feel that way. But when you're a business, it's just not smart. I do think that it is a great learning lesson for all the other people in the brewing industry to not make such dumb decisions. Maybe because things went down the way that they did, it kind of shows that people are fed up with the super edgelord attitudes and juvenile jokes and everything like that, and maybe that kind of thing just isn't wanted by the beer community. I don't know. I'm not a professional producer of beer, so I don't know firsthand, but that's just my 2 cents. That's just what it kind of seems like. Moving on to slightly greener pastures, a new beer documentary was released this week, and it's kind of taken the industry and the community by storm. Now, real quick, I do want to give a huge shout out to my friend David for actually informing me about this before the hype blew up. So I was able to get in and check it from the ground up, before all the hype got there. So I feel special. But it is so good, and I really want to make sure anybody else who happened to miss the news about this was informed, because it's just that good. The movie is called Beers of Joy. And this film follows several different storylines, all of which revolve around beer, obviously, and are incredibly interesting in my opinion. First off, we have a chef who goes through and he's talking about the history of American craft beer and its development over time and its evolution, and it's incredibly interesting, his perspective and what he uncovers. Two, we have a professional brewer doing a pilgrimage through Germany and learning about the historical aspects of beer and almost ancient beer traditions. And lastly, we got several people who are going through the Master Cicerone exam, and that is an incredibly grueling test and something that there's honestly not a whole lot of information out there, and I think it's incredibly informative for those of us who are going through the Cicerone program and want to learn more, but also for people who've never heard about it. When I try to explain what the Cicerone program is, I'm often met with like really blank, milky-eyed stares, because they're like, no, it's just beer, who really cares? Oh, you're trying to be a professional beer taster? Well, yeah, that kind of sounds like a cool job. But two, with this documentary, it kind of shows that beer is getting to the point where we're trying to compete with wine here, where wine has their sommeliers and their professionals. We are trying to get established like that too in our industry and show that we are respectable and that we can be classy and we can have depth, complexity, and it can be a beverage that makes you think. And I do think that this documentary did a really, really good job of highlighting that. I will say that there is a little bit of a justifiable criticism towards the movie. It was originally funded and produced by a subsidiary of AB InBev, if I'm not mistaken. I could be slightly wrong on that, but I do know that the majority of the financing for this movie came through AB InBev. And because of that, obviously, it is going to be a bit skewed towards, big beer, AB InBev being a positive thing. Some people will say it's just basically a big old commercial. I kind of get what they're going with there, but I'll also say that it's still a good movie. It still has a lot of great information in it. So I highly encourage everyone out there to give it a watch. I really, really think that a lot of people could get a whole lot of deeper understanding of beer and some of the more esoteric aspects of beer and its communities. Also, by supporting this film, you're supporting the independent beer film movement. We've seen a lot more beer documentaries coming out in the past few years, and I do think that the majority of them are well done and they serve a purpose of documenting and capturing the history and different moments in beer. It's kind of what I try to do on this channel, but in just like a really good way, not the shitty way I do it. So check it out. I will put a link down in the description. Moving on to beers that were announced or released this week, we got a weird one, kind of. It's beer, it's just not for people. Man's two best friends have always been beer and dogs. And it hasn't always been the best idea to mix those two together, because beer has hops in it and hops have compounds within it that could be dangerous and even lethal for our four-legged friends. But coming out of Houston, Texas this week, we were given insight into a brewery that is brewing beer specifically for dogs. And they got like the best names ever. You got like Crotch Sniffer Ale, you got Malt Liquor, Licker, Liquor. It's funny. And even the IPA Lot in the Yard, because dogs pee in the yard. That's funny. Although I am not sure how they were able to get an IPA flavor without hops, so that's something interesting. All of these beers are hop-free, alcohol-free, and are brewed with either a base of veggie, chicken, or pork broth, so delicious and nutritious. Unfortunately, as of right now, it is only available in Texas and specifically Houston. However, earlier this week they did start the expansion into Austin. So with any luck, dogs all across America will be able to drink some delicious beer. So that's pretty cool, I guess. So I don't know. It was just a weird, kooky story I wanted to cover. But I will definitely send a 6-pack of beer to any beer reviewer who is able to get their hands on some of these beers and give them a taste for themselves. Specifically the IPA. I need to know, is it hoppy? And if it is, how did they do it? I just kind of want to see a human drink dog beer. I don't know why. Jumping back into the news, we got some sad news coming out of Utah. Only a week or two ago was I reporting about how I had such hope and excitement for Utah because they were going to try to push and raise their ABV limit. Well, that was dashed this week. For a little backfill, a little context, Utah has a law that only allows beers to be 3.2% ABW and a maximum, that's the maximum cap of like 4% ABV. So a bill was introduced in order to allow Utah to be able to sell stronger beer, not quite fully unlimited like we're seeing out of Colorado or Kansas City, but stronger. We are moving up to the 4.8 ABW, and that's a big step forward for them, or at least it would have been. The bill had passed the Senate, and we were getting a lot of progress and a lot of excitement going on, but unfortunately, House Republicans in Utah crushed it under their boot heel. This decision effectively killed this bill just dead in its tracks, and also set a precedent that would almost make it impossible for the similar bill to go through without significant changes to it. To add insult to injury, the Republicans the next day during a committee gave a presentation where they mocked other states' beer and alcohol laws, such as Alaska's, where it is illegal to give beer to a moose, or in Ohio's, where it is illegal to depict Santa in beer advertisements. And the reason that they did this is so that they could say, hey, look, Utah's laws are not so weird after all. Look how weird and kooky these are. They went on to say that the reason that this bill doesn't need to be passed or that their current laws don't need to be changed is because any attempts to do so would result in higher DUI and alcohol-related fatalities. Now, I will say that over the past 5 to 10 years, the data does show that Utah has been around the 5 to 10 rank in DUI-related incidents, or lack thereof. They're in the 5th to 10th place of having the least amount. Does that make sense? But to counter that argument, every state below it has much higher alcohol limits. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense right on the surface. And then if you look into it even further, several states there have full, unlimited, full strength beer laws, and they're below you. So the logic doesn't really equal out. It's not 1-1, which most likely indicates that the reason Utah is so low is more about a cultural and a societal issue and less so of a beer and alcohol issue. See, you might not know this, but Utah is predominantly occupied by a religious sect that does not believe in overconsumption, if consumption at all, of alcoholic beverages. So if you have an entire state worth of majority of their people, at least, who do not believe in alcohol consumption or drinking in excess, of course you're going to have lower DUI rates. Has nothing to do with the beer, has everything to do with the religion, which is where we kind of get into a little bit of a problem. Because of that, it does seem that the decision to lay down these laws are more inspired by the religious aspect, which if that is the case, then that would be the state's religious majority religiously oppressing that of the minority. But that goes down a rabbit hole I really don't want to get into on this video. But what I will say is that Ohio's Santa ban is because Santa is more likely to be an incentive for children. And we don't want to have any type of advertising that is going to appeal to children. That makes sense. Additionally, in Alaska, we don't give beer to wild animals because it's not good for them. It could potentially harm them. Nobody wants a giant ass drunk moose storming through their city. So yeah, their laws make sense and aren't just weird because they're weird, and they're not just weird because of a religious precedent. So yeah, Utah, you didn't really make any good points there. But moving on and concluding, there is hope still for Utah. There is a new movement behind the Responsible Beer Choice Coalition of Utah. They want to get this issue on the 2020 ballots to allow the voters to decide and not the representatives who are representing their so-called constituents. Hopefully by that time, more data will be available from states like Colorado and cities like Kansas City, where we are seeing full strength beer able to be sold at gas stations, able to be sold at grocery stores, and much, much higher than the proposed changes that Utah wants to make. So hopefully with that much more available data, we will see much more education and much more resources that they can use to make a clear, concise, straightforward argument. So real quick to Colorado and Kansas, don't fuck this up. Utah is depending on you. And for all you Utahians, Utanites, I still don't know what to call y'all, keep the faith alive, stay educated, try to educate others, and on 2020, if it does make it to the ballot, get out and vote. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed This Week in Beer. A couple interesting stories, some that got me a little hot and bothered, but please let me know what you thought about it, and if there were any stories I missed, please let me know. I will try to go back and cover them later on this week or next week. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Remember, there is a story in every bottle, and that life is beautiful. Cheers.